Hey, I'm Felissa Rose, and you're watching Keto and Crime.
We have another quote-unquote religious scam, though this isn't technically tied to any church, though religion played a major part in why they were able to embezzle and scam and Ponzi over $26 million out of trusting and, albeit say, somewhat naive people. The reason that religious scams really particularly get under my skin is because you prey on people that are looking for hope. They're looking for something good. They're faithful people that are wanting to live up to the doctrines of a particular religious faith, no matter what religion. I don't care if it's an Abrahamic religion, Islam, Christianity, Judaism, or one that encompasses more of a large pan of gods like, your Hinduisms, or a philosophy like Buddhism. I don't care if it's any of that. I don't care who it is. If you're using somebody's heart, deeply found faith and believe to scam them out of money, you're a particular brand of scum that needs to be eliminated. Like I said, I'm not religious. I'm an atheist. I don't believe in an afterlife. I believe once it's over, it's over. But if there was a hell, I believe that there would be a special place in it for people like this. So anyway, let's get into it. Larry Bates, a scam for the ages. I'm over here now, just kind of going back and forth so you can see all the presentation. But that is Larry Bates, and that's a picture of him around 2007 or 8, around the height of the scandal, really. But not a whole lot on his upbringing. He was born in West Tennessee, not far from Memphis. He grew up in a very staunch Christian household. He became a minister, believe it or not, a Baptist minister, and then, as a lot of ministers do, particularly in the South, he became part of the Tennessee legislature. He was elected from his district to represent them in the Capitol in Nashville. So he had a huge following from both the church and being a legislator. So he was a very trusted person. And then in 1985, he started First American Monetary Consultants. And he was known for the trading of precious metals. He had a hugely successful business trading precious metals, gold, silver, copper, what have you, but mainly gold and silver. And he traded this back and forth. The way his company operated, you as a client would sign up. You would give him a certain amount of money to buy a certain amount of precious metals. He would buy that and deliver it to you, taking a fee for what he did. Pretty straightforward, a very simple business model. And from 1985 to about 2006, when he really started to get scammy with it, he had a very successful business and built up a pretty legitimate fortune from doing that. So I don't understand what happened. I don't know if he was truly a scamster. Part of me believes that he was, but then there's another part that believes maybe he just didn't realize how far down the hole he went, but I'll let you decide for yourself. So all that time, he built up a pretty legitimate business and a good reputation for being one of the top precious metals dealers in the country. So enter 2006. I know I've got 2007 here, but 2006 really when it started. Why? Because that's when we entered the Great Recession here in the United States. You remember that? So between 2007 and 2013, when everything kind of broke apart, he took over $87 million from people. And the reason that the final tally was $26 million, he was able to deliver returns or the precious metals back to enough of those people to get the total down to $26 million. So it was like a classic Ponzi scheme. He was taking in the money, using some of the money to buy precious metals, paying off past investors, and then using the rest to fund a lavish lifestyle for him and his family, because his sons, Chuck, Robert, and Robert's wife, Kelsey, were also heavily ingrained in this scam. It didn't say anything. I couldn't find anything about his wife. So I don't know if his wife had already passed on or she really wasn't a part of it. I don't know. But between 2007 and 2013, he really started raking in the money, and he preyed on people's fears, and we're going to talk about how that is. He also, around 2007, started the International Radio Network, a Christian radio network, where he broadcast his message of invest in precious metals for true security to the masses. It was kind of like, what's that guy's name that said the world was going to end twice in 2011? He put his message out through a radio network. Same here, except it was financial. And if you'll hang on, I'm going to see if I can't find a clip. I'm going to insert it here from one of his broadcasts. Hang on. Okay, his radio network would put things on DVD, VHS, broadcast them on local television networks that had a religious affiliation. So think your CBNs, your TBNs, Trinity and Christian Broadcasting Networks. He would also broadcast a video option of all of his radio shows. So they would film and record him in the studio and put the audio out on the radio station, and then put the visual out on all these local religious stations. And here's a brief clip of what he would talk to people about, and we're going to get more into that. But here he is.
Questions you might have. You have a microphone here, so first question.
You mentioned the FDIC briefly, and I was just wondering, I've heard that they only have about $60 billion in reserve, and I'm wondering, is it really broke?
Yeah, what they can do, the FDIC, again, can cover roughly 1.5 cents on the dollar of all their deposit fund liabilities. So, yeah, it's broke compared to what the risk is. You could have a major bank failure and deplete the whole fund. But when you challenge the FDIC with this statement, the FDIC said, yes, that's true, but we have direct borrowing authority from the United States Treasury, which is true. But again, where does the Treasury get the money? Tax it, borrow it, or print it. And you end up paying the cost of your own bailout. So this is why I'm saying that that you move into the gold and silver as a hedge where you have
people's fears, saying that an imminent government and monetary collapse was coming. And so the only way that's secure is to invest in precious metals. He had a saying that he said, gold and silver are always currency, everything else is credit, and it's been that way for 1,000 years. And that's what he would talk about. When we got off, the United States used to have enough gold to back up all their currency. Most countries did. We got off that standard a long time ago, which is, I guess, kind of a little scary. But he really played on that. He played it up. There's a government collapse coming, and think about the time period, 2006, 2007, 2008. We're already in a recession, so people are losing their jobs. Banks and businesses that have been in business for over 100 years are going out of business. So you really are seeing, especially these elderly people, because that tended to be his market, Christian elderly people over the age of like 60 that were on the cusp of retiring, and then they're seeing their 401ks and everything else just taking a nosedive. And so he says, okay, you need to take all your money out of that because it's going away, and put it in precious metals, which will always be currency, and you need to bury it in your backyard. No kidding. He would tell people to hide it in PVC, dig 5 feet in their backyard, bury it, put a steel pipe over it, and then bury it. A small layer steel pipe, bury it to keep it safe. It was very like, what's an end of times prepper kind of stuff that he would teach people, because this will always be currency, so you need to keep it safe from hoarders. And what he's talking about here is making people scared that the FDIC couldn't cover them in the case that their banks failed. And he said the FDIC can only cover about 1.5 cents on the dollar. It's not true. I have known people that have had to check in their FDIC. When WAMU failed about this time, Washington Mutual, the bank failed. I have friends that had accounts in there, and the FDIC covered their loss, no problem. So what he's doing, I'm not saying the government is infinite, but the government has power to get money. So he was always instilling this fear that the government's about to collapse, or the government's going to become an agent of the Antichrist, and they're going to take your money, your electronic money, which we've all become kind of dependent on with credit cards and PayPal and things like that. And he's going to take all that, they're going to take all that away. So you need to have physical stuff, not paper money, not coins, but real gold that you can cash in. So he played on people, Dave Ramsey. And he is absolutely 100% against investing in precious metals because he's always of the idea that if the government fails, you've got bigger problems. And the fact you have some gold isn't really going to help you because somebody's going to, with a gun or something else, is going to take that from you. So it's kind of a non-event, to quote him. But what he's trying to say here is that it doesn't matter. Gold and precious metals are some of the most fluctuating prices you can, commodities in general. They fluctuate all over the place because they're dependent on so many different things. So what he's trying to say here, it doesn't matter what the price of gold or silver does. It's the price of the paper money, which you're trying to get away from, that's changing, not the gold. Your gold's still going to have the same buying power as it did before. Well, if you think about that, it's not really logical. So that's just kind of some of the shenanigans he would talk about to people. So let's get back to our presentation. So as you can see, it was very fear-mongering based on end times predictions, the recession. He was saying that this recession is a sign of the end times, so let's buy precious metals so that you can always buy food and stuff like that, just like a doomsday prepper kind of thing. And so people bought into this, and they basically started giving him chunks of money, $25,000, $50,000, $100,000, to buy them a certain amount of gold or silver, and then he would deliver the gold and silver and take a fee for what he did. But common sense should dictate that he's making his fortune in paper money, traditional paper and electronic money. He's not hoarding up great stores of gold and silver. I mean, he had some. There was some that was confiscated, but his entire fortune was certainly not in gold and silver. He had built up earthly treasures in the form of real estate, cash money, some precious metals, and investments. So he wasn't kind of following what he preached. And like I said, he got his children, Chuck, who's pictured here, his youngest son, Robert, and his wife, Kelsey. Kelsey was actually the receptionist at their business in Memphis, and they also had a branch in Colorado. So from 2006 through about 2013, everything went spiffy. People got there, they bought their gold from him, he delivered their gold, took his fee, but then he started to spend. And he started making political donations, as people do. And as you can see him right here with Mr. Jim Baker, who that's a whole different scandal we'll get into at some point. Also, Jim Baker sells doomsday prepping, meals, as you can see in a bucket, meals in a bucket. So they're all fear-mongering, talking about the end of the world kind of stuff. But so that's how he was able to reach a large amount of people. His network, his DVDs, his VHS, and these other religious fanatics spread his message, as well as speaking at churches, the fact he was a politician and then a reverend, all that stuff. So he started living large. He and his family, they were all well worth over multi-million-dollar. They had a huge house in Middleton, Tennessee, which is pictured here, that the entire clan lived on. He in one house, Chuck, his oldest son, in another house, and then Robert and Kelsey in another. So they all lived on this big compound, 3 big houses, and they lived life large. They weren't worried about the end of the world. At least it didn't seem that way. So let's move on. All right, so they're living large. They're also having to start doing a Ponzi maneuver of using the money they just collected from a new investor to buy the gold and pay off past investors, because they were living so large. They weren't just living off the legitimate fees that they should be charging. They were starting to pocket it all. So they were living large. They started to run low of money. So just like talk about Fire Festival, how he would use current tickets to pay off past credit cards so he could buy the current tickets. It was kind of like that. He would take this investor's money instead, because he had like a 30 to 60 day delivery period for the precious metals. So he had a window, so he knew he had time to get more money in. So he would take my money, for example, and let's say I gave him $50,000. He would buy $45,000 worth of precious metals. He would keep his $5,000 fee, and then he would turn around, and instead of giving that gold to me because I paid for it, he would turn around and give it to someone that had already paid $50,000 or $25,000 for gold. He would give it to them, and then he would wait to get a new investor to buy my gold to give it to me within 30 to 60 days. So as all Ponzi schemes do, it started to crack because he started having issues getting people in. And so how are they able to do all this? Well, we'd already kind of talked about it. The gold scare. Gold and silver are always have an upturn when there is political or economic upheaval anywhere. If you're in a recession or even just a slowing market, precious metal prices will skyrocket. Same with like diamonds and things like that. They will skyrocket because they're tangible. Just like he said, they will always be currency. So those prices will go up. So people know that, and they start seeing the price of gold go up, up, up. A lot of people are buying gold because a lot of people start doing that in a turn down. And they saw that, so people during the recession started trusting that more, so they were able to tap that market. So that was background, plus the fact these are all evangelical Christians that believe the world is ending at any time. We're in the end times. I've been hearing that since I was a little girl. And so they believe that instead of they need to get off the grid. They need to get away from having to take the mark of the beast during the tribulation. And to be able to use the traditional banking systems, they need to move away from that. So that was another thing. And him being a former minister and a trusted legislature in the state of Tennessee, he was able to do that. And he was able to use his own radio network plus all these other religious television networks, DVD, church direct sales, to make people believe him. Jim Bakker was a huge proponent, as was the Jewish Voice, which is a huge network that kind of caters to both Messianic Jews, which are Jews that accept Jesus as their savior. It's a weird dynamic, and evangelical Christians that believe it's their destiny to help out Israel and the Jewish people because of the end times. Again, all that ties together. So he was a huge proponent of that, and the economic downturn of 2006 laid a pathway for that. So, and I said he was doing a traditional bait and switch Ponzi scheme, at first living off his fees and a little extra. Then he started taking it all, and then he ended up in a situation where he's having to backfill orders pretty much. And then he relied on his beliefs that precious metals are always currency. He preyed on the most vulnerable, the religious, the semi-retired, the almost retired, the retired, that really saw their investments start to dwindle, so they got scared. And then he used most of it to fund their 10,000-acre compound in Middleton, Tennessee. So, about 2013, cracks started to appear. He wasn't able to deliver people's gold. People were calling his office, sending emails, threatening legal action because they haven't received their money, and they went radio dead silent. Instead of putting out any kind of thing, hey, we're working on it, there's been this issue with the gold market, this issue with the silver market, because toward the end, I guess he was trying to save some money, so he went for a cheaper metal, silver. So he started trying to put people off gold into silver there for a minute to kind of stop the hemorrhaging of money. But the problem is that they were spending it. It wasn't that it was actually being made to purchase the metals. If they were just doing what they were supposed to be doing, they would have had a profitable business. They might not have been millionaires, but they would have had a six-figure income, based on, because he ran it very successfully from 1985 until, 2006 when the shenanigans started. So they got away from their traditional means. And I have no idea if he did that or if it was his sons had something to do with it. But in any way, a lot of people got scammed. He started not returning calls, so people started complaining to law enforcement, the SEC, Securities and Exchange Commission, and the whole thing started to come in ravels in 2013 when a lot of investigations started. So after a long 4-year investigation with the SEC censoring them where they could no longer sell precious metals, Tuesday, September 4th, 2017, Larry Bates, the older man, was sentenced to 262 months imprisonment. That's 22 years. Right at it, 22 years in federal prison, 3 years supervised release after that, so 3 years probation, and had to pay over $21 million in restitution and a special penalty of $4,600. The oldest son, Chuck Bates, was sentenced to 151 months. That's right about 12 years in federal prison. Again, the 3 years supervised probation or parole, however you want to look at that, and was ordered to pay almost $20 million to victims. Robert Bates was sentenced also to about 12 years in prison, 151 months, as well as he was also convicted on wire fraud for a totally separate charge, which we won't get into, as well as that 3 years supervised release, also ordered to pay just over $19 million. And Kinsey, his wife, who was the receptionist and took a lot of the complaints and kind of blew people off, was sentenced to 63 months or 5.25 years, as well as 3 years supervised probation, parole, and a $300 mandatory special assessment. So basically, those were their sentences. They were released on their own recognizance before they actually had to report. They are all currently serving their sentences in West Tennessee. But instead of just taking them on in, they released them on their own recognizance to get their affairs in order. It's amazing how that happens with these high-dollar cases, isn't it? And the family went into damage control. The government thought they had seized everything, their houses, all the assets they could find. But the one thing they didn't count on was a storage facility near Memphis that the federal authorities and local authorities did not find. And by the time they found it, these people had already been released on their own recognizance. There was actually cameras showing them come in to the storage facility, cut the locks off the storage facility, and bank out of there with a lot of bags and a lot of trunks. And they never found those. So what they think is they had cash or they had gold, silver, diamonds, what have you, stored in that facility, and they took it and they went out and they buried it. So the government was able to, recover a certain amount of the money to give some of the people their money back. And then of course with the fines these people are going to have to pay, I think pretty much it's going to bankrupt them. I don't think they'll pay a dime of it. But they still managed to get away, supposedly, with no telling how many millions of dollars of precious metals that were hidden in a storage unit. Come on, cops. Do better than that. I mean, okay, I love our men in blue, but that was a big fail. But anyway, so that's where it ends. They're all serving their sentences, and I hope that this has made people a little bit smarter about religious scams and how not to let people prey on your fears, that you need to do your research and not fall for fear-mongering. So anyway, I hope you enjoyed that. That's Larry Bates, and there's also a book that was written about him called The Millennium Effect, which is actually on the front of my on my thumbnail. You'll see that. So that's a very good book. I read that. I watched a bunch of documentaries. This was very interesting. I loved it. And next week, I'm going to do part 1 of Enron. That's going to be a big one. I'm reading the book, Enron, smartest people and the smartest guys in the room. I'm reading lots of stuff to get ready for that. So hope you're going to enjoy that. Thank you so much. Like, comment, subscribe. Let me know what you think. Have you ever been swindled by a fast-talking religious scammer? I'd like to know. Anyway, thanks a lot, guys. Ketosis, y'all. Keto Krime.